past. If we turn to Coke's history, buried in the archives, I think there are solutions for the future. So, let's go back to the past, and let's visit with this guy, John Pemberton, who was the creator of the Coca-Cola formula. John Pemberton was a pharmacist. He came to Atlanta in the 1870s trying to strike it rich in this patent medicine market. But unfortunately, his business burned down not once, but twice. And he went bankrupt by the end of the 1870s. It doesn't sound like the guy who's going to be the best-selling brand in the world, right? It sounds like somebody who's never going to make it. So what do you do when you're out of luck and you want to make a buck? Well, you look at the world and you say, okay, what's a drink that's really doing awesome right now? And I'll try and imitate it. And that's exactly what John Pemberton did. He saw this drink, Vin Mariani, coming out of France. It was named after a guy named Angelo Mariani, and it was selling like wildfire. And here's why. It was a Bordeaux wine, a red wine, mixed with the coca leaf from South America that would have infused it with small tinctures of cocaine. So we're talking about, folks, cocaine-infused wine. It was stimulating and quite exhilarating. Our president, Ulysses S. Grant, drank this stuff. Makes me feel good. Of course it does, Ulysses S. Grant. It's got cocaine in it. And the other thing is, he's sitting there saying, this is good stuff. It was like the Four Loko, really, of the 19th century, if you think about it. Even the Pope drank this stuff, okay? So if you're not Catholic out there, imagine this. If communion had Vin Mariani, I think we'd all be signing up to be Catholic today. So, John Pemberton, this guy's out of luck trying to figure out how to make some money, sees this and says, all right, let's go do this. And folks, this is the precursor to what becomes Coca-Cola. This is the first advertisement for it in the 1880s. It was called Pemberton's Wine of Coca. Not very original, completely copying that drink, Vin Mariani. And it was a red wine mixed with the coca leaf. Yes, it would have had wine in it, and it would have had small quantities of cocaine. He made it. Yes, this great drink is selling. But there was a problem. And the problem was not the cocaine. The problem was the alcohol, because the city of Atlanta moved to ban the sale of alcohol in 1885. Oh my gosh, he's got this great drink. Now he's got to give it up. What's he going to do? You know what he's going to do. He creates Coca-Cola. It is a non-alcoholic version, a temperance version of that earlier wine-based drink. And it became this great thing years later. Now, Pemberton did not put it in bottles. It was sold just at soda fountains in little cups, like the cute cup you see here. And he would never actually see this drink become bottled or go global, because he dies. It's a sad story. He finally makes it, and he dies. And so the person that follows after him is Asa Candler, his successor, and that's the real success of Coke. Asa Candler is a pharmacist who incorporates Coca-Cola in 1892, and he's going to create this great brand. Asa Candler, by the way, was a kind of workaholic, puritanical Sunday school teacher kind of guy. I scoured the archives for the happiest picture I could find of Asa Candler. This is Asa Candler on a good day. This is Asa Candler smiling. And the important point here is that, like Pemberton, these guys were in the Reconstruction South. They did not have a lot of money. They didn't have a lot of money, and so they knew that the only way they could spread this drink far and wide is if they partnered with people. And Asa Candler's brilliant idea was to bottle Coke. In 1899, he makes the decision to bottle Coca-Cola. And that would change not only Coca-Cola, it would change the world, creating one of the biggest distribution networks the world has ever seen, stretching from Alabama all the way to Zimbabwe. It was an incredible system. But the only way that it worked was if small businessmen in little towns across the country, and then ultimately the globe, put forward a little bit of money to build these bottling plants in basements, in little small buildings across the country. And these were folks, again, with not a lot of money. They cared about everything, all the costs, the bottles, the laborers, the trucks. They had to think about all that. And when it came to packaging, they couldn't afford to waste their packaging. They had to reuse it over and over again to save on cost. So they used returnable glass bottles. Returnable glass bottles in the early 20th century so that they would save on cost. But here's the key. How did that returnable system work? Well, they put a deposit on those containers, a deposit of 1 to 2 cents. And if you as a consumer brought your bottle back to your distributor, you got 1 to 2 cents back. You got paid. And it was an incredible system. It worked. I went through the archives to look at this system. We're talking about 80% of Coca-Cola bottlers were using a deposit system in 1929. The trade journals of the time said the only sane and logical, literally sane and logical thing to do is to put a price on packaging if you want it to be returned, right? And you got to understand, this is at a time when the drink's selling for 5 cents. So you're talking about a 2-cent deposit on a 5-cent drink? Heck yeah, I'm bringing that thing back. I want my 2 cents back. 40% markup. Incredible. I have evidence in the 1960s that shows bottles doing 40, 50 trips back and forth between their bottler and their consumer. Folks, it worked. It worked really, really well. So what happened? Well, in the 1960s and 1970s, Coca-Cola began switching to throwaway single-use containers that we see today. First, steel cans, then aluminum cans, and then finally plastic bottles by the 1970s. And when they switched to that system, they said, look, this is a new automobile age. People are on the move. People want convenience. They want to be able to put the packaging wherever they want, right? We don't need a deposit system, and we don't need a returnable system. We got rid of those deposits. And as you might predict, trash started piling up everywhere, national parks, rivers, oceans. And people said, this is a problem. But Coke, which was one of the biggest movers and shakers in the beverage industry, said, don't worry. Don't worry, because there's this new thing called recycling that was just emerging in the 1970s. And this is what's going to reclaim all this waste. We don't need a deposit system. That recycling technology can reclaim it all. It was a huge bet. It was a big gamble, and they thought it would pay off. But the thing is, we now as historians can look back at over 4 decades of data to see whether that gamble paid off. And looking at the late 1990s, when curbside recycling was really in full steam here in the United States, coming up to today, this is the reality of what happened. Not only did recycling rates not skyrocket when we started really imposing these curbside recycling systems, for many years it declined. And in recent years, we're seeing this kind of stagnation with this rate around 30%. This is a system in absolute crisis. You see that circle? It's not a circle. So how do we fix it? Well, we know the answers, right? We know from history that when you put a price on packaging, when you value that packaging, it will be reclaimed. And we don't have to guess whether that system will work today. We can see it in action. I'm mentioning Michigan at an Ohio State thing, I know, but this Michigan's doing a great thing here, okay? They have got a system that has deposits in place. The citizens of that state and in Maine have enforced their own deposits via law to say that you have to put a price on a container. And in those states, if you go and deliver those containers, you get some money back. And I just wanted to show you the rates, that the rates are through the roof, 80, 90% recycling rates. And if we go to Denmark or Germany, I could list a lot of different countries whose nations have taken it upon themselves to do this system. We see recycling rates through the roof. It works, and we can make it work here across this nation. So Coca-Cola said that by the year 2030, they're going to reclaim and recycle every single container that they put out into the environment. This is the pledge they have recently made. They're going to reclaim every single container. There will be a world without waste, they say. And I applaud them for this. There's a lot of well-meaning people in the companies thinking about these big strategies. But the problem is, in 2016, as recently as 2016, in a leaked corporate document, Coca-Cola said that it was going to, quote, fight back against deposit systems in the European Union. Folks, we don't have to wait for Coke to get woke. Okay? We, the citizens of this country, can make the conscious choice to end the unconscionable practice of not putting a price on packaging, especially finite resources like plastics. If we do that, if we learn from our history, then I think we will make history. And it'll be a history that our descendants can be proud of 450 years from now. Thank you.